My name's Andrew Whittaker. I'm the Deputy Director for Partner Engagement within Cert-Uk. Hopefully in the next sort of 10 to 15 minutes, I'll talk a little bit on the background of who we are, where we've come from, a bit about the roles that we have, particularly around the National Cyber Security Incident Management, and then a little bit about situational awareness and particularly the info sharing programme we've got through CISP, the Cyber Security Information Sharing Partnerships. But crucially, I'm also here to listen. We've only been around for 3 weeks, so please do find me over lunch. I should be fairly easy to spot. I'm the one who didn't get the invitation with the dress code in, so I'm the one in the suit and the tie. Because I'm really interested to sort of hear from you guys as well in terms of how we can work effectively with you and the sorts of roles that you think we should be playing. So very quickly then, who is Cert-Uk? Because we've had a number of, different types of certs within the UK for many years now. We've just never had one with the Cert-Uk branding, the logo. We came out of an announcement from Francis Maude, the Minister for the Cabinet Office at IA12, that we would set up a national cert, and we're funded through the National Cyber Security Programme. Now, in the project to set up Cert-Uk, the team spoke to well over 100, possibly around 150 different stakeholders, both from government, but more importantly from outside government, as well as people inside the UK and internationally. And they came up with a vast range of potential things that a national cert could do. And if there's one thing I've learned, is that anyone who tells you there is a single model for a national cert certainly doesn't know what they're talking about, because there are so many different possible arrangements that you could have out there, and it really does depend on your political setup, your legal setup, your technological setup even. Cert-Uk has taken on 4 roles, and I'll talk a little bit about more of those in a second. But the good news for us is that we're built on very good foundations, as I said at the start. There have been a number of different institutions, a number of different bodies that have been acting with cert-like functions within the UK for many years. But equally, it's a rapidly changing area, and you don't need me to tell you that anyone who stands here and tells you what it's going to look like in 2 years' time equally doesn't know what they're talking about. So a really important part for us is about being agile. So we talk very much at this stage we're in phase 1. We've just launched 3 weeks or 3.5 weeks old now. So exactly what we'll look like in 2 years' time is still a bit of a guessing game. So we need to make sure that we're agile enough that we can flex and respond as we see what happens. Right from the start, the partnership with the private sector has been really crucial to us, and the appointment of Chris Gibson as director was the first step towards that. A number of you will know Chris either from his days at Citibank, where he headed up their e-crime group, or in his role within First, where he's been president for the last 2 years. And he brings that wealth of experience and knowledge with him to the organisation. Similarly, in terms of how the organisation split, I run the partner engagement side of the house, the sort of outreach side of it. My colleague Neil Cassidy runs the operational side of the house, and his background is from Kinetic, where he's got an awful lot of experience in building and running SOCs, both within government and in industry. We have 4 roles within Cert-Uk that flow from the National Cyber Security Strategy. I will actually work my way up the slide here. So first of all, with the international point of contact. The obvious partners that you might think of, clearly the US, our European partners, but actually we plug into the operational, the practitioner level cert-to-cert dialogue going on across the whole world. So just flown back from Oman, where we had the regional cybersecurity conference there, meeting with a whole range of national organisations, from the Organisation of Islamic Conference, for example, the Gulf Cooperation Council. But equally here, we take a lot of visitors in. So any national cert we're looking to build an operational relationship with. We have a specific remit for the CNI, that's the critical national infrastructure companies, in terms of supporting them on cyber incident handling. Obviously, the UK government's background in supporting the critical national infrastructure is very long, and 20, 25 years ago, it was largely based around physical or personnel issues, and it was relatively straightforward. You built bigger barriers, you ran more detailed background checks on people. But recognising now with cyber, the challenge is just that much greater, and therefore the remit goes beyond just the CNI to the group called the CPP, which is the Cyber Protection Priorities, because it's recognising now that it could be supply chains, it could be contractors, anyone with a link in to the bigger organisations could potentially be a target. The third area is situational awareness, and I'll talk a lot more about that when we get on to talking about the CISP in a sec. But finally, I'll talk a little bit about national incident management, national cyber incident management. The good news, stood here, is that this is not a regular thing. It's not something that we are dealing with at a national level every single day, but I'm sure many of you are dealing with a whole range of cybersecurity incidents, as we just heard from our previous speaker, whether that's hour by hour or day by day. So what would have to be different about a national incident? Well, it would have to go across a whole number of sectors. It would have to be taking out a range of potentially critical services. And crucially, it would be very unlikely that we were talking about cyber in isolation. I guess this is where my personal background comes in. So I'll admit I'm not a cyber specialist. I come from our Foreign Office and running the crisis management department there. So an awful lot of experience in terms of handling crises unfolding anywhere in the world and how we respond to those. Cert-Uk has got a coordination function in terms of making sure that we bring together all the people who are going to be needed in a response, and we work very closely with our colleagues in what's called the Civil Contingency Secretariat inside the Cabinet Office, and plug in as we need to into the COBRA mechanisms. COBRA is the Cabinet Office briefing room. There's no actual A on the end. But they are the national body for coordinating a response to an incident, whatever that might be. And now we recognise that cyber might be one of those incidents. But it's crucially about preparation and making sure that we are as best prepared as we can be, because it's fairly inevitable that there will be some sort of cyber incident at some point in the not too distant future. So how do we do this? Well, it's through the practicing, it's through the exercising, it's through the planning functions. And so within Cert-Uk, we've got a major role there in terms of preparing the UK for a potential cyber incident. Some of you may have heard of the Waking Shark series of exercises. These were run with the banking sector, and now Cert-Uk will run these with a number of different sectors over the course of the next months and years ahead. We recognise that while government's got a function, on the cyber side we don't run much of the critical national infrastructure, and many of you sat in this room will have way more information than we have within government. So part of that exercising is think about how we work effectively with you, and we very much hope that come and talk to me afterwards in ideas that you've got in how we can do that exercising function together, whether that's exercising or testing that we're running and hosting, or that you're hosting and running and you would like us to come along to, or be welcome to come and sit and see how you operate and how we can make sure that those links work effectively. So apologies in advance, this is my attempt to get as many acronyms in one slide as I possibly can. But I'm just trying to draw out the range of people that we potentially work with. We sit within the Cabinet Office, but our role is very much an umbrella function, and so engaging with those who have much wider reach than us. I'm delighted to see colleagues here from Janet, obviously the link into the academic side, or Nominet on the Cyber Assist programme to reach out to small and medium-sized enterprises. But equally, we work with a whole range of government departments, with the security and intelligence community, with law enforcement, and with our international partners as well. I'll also use this slide to mention a few of the sort of what we don't do. So we're not running networks. We're not sitting there monitoring networks on a day-to-day basis. It's very much, and our message is this very consistently, is that organisations themselves must decide what for them is the right balance between their day-to-day business processes, the cybersecurity risks, and how they're going to balance those up. Our message is at a number of different levels, but crucially to the board level, to explain to them that when we talk about cybersecurity, it's not an IT problem, it's a board level problem. Something going wrong just because it's cyber will have massive reputational impacts as well as real world impacts for the company. It can knock millions off their share value, or their share price and their valuation. So trying to get them to realise that they can't just leave it to these IT people and expect them to sort everything out if they don't give it any support and if they don't give it any funding. Similarly, we're not law enforcement. We don't have a remit to do investigations, we don't have a remit to do prosecutions, but we do work very, very closely with the National Crime Agency, the National Cyber Crime Unit, and the City of London Police, who now run Action Fraud. So if you have a crime, if you're aware of fraud going on, those are the people to report it to. If you come to us and tell you, that's where we'll be steering you to. We're not there for the general public. Our remit is quite clearly industry, academia and the wider public sector, but we do work very closely with those who run the programs like Get Safe Online or Cyber Streetwise, which are targeted at the public more broadly. And finally, we're not a regulator, but we will engage quite closely with the regulators, particularly for the critical national infrastructure sectors that we care about. So now to talk a little bit about CISP, the Cybersecurity Information Sharing Partnership. This is actually a year older than Cert-Uk, but now that we've come into being, we've given them a permanent home within Cert-Uk. And that means running the sharing platform, it means hosting the Fusion Cell, and I'll talk a bit more about both of those in a sec. The good news about bringing CISP within Cert-Uk is it means we can exploit the synergies that are very naturally there and offer us a lot in terms of the link up with our incident handling team or with our international range of contacts. And being able to flow that information in both directions is extremely helpful to us. It started just over a year ago in March 2013 with less than 80 companies. We're now just about at the 400 companies mark and over 1,000 individuals engaged in it. We've also recognised that it's really important to take it wider than the CNI, wider than the critical national infrastructure. So whether that's getting into supply chains, encouraging supply chains to come on board, but we've also engaged with trading bodies. So very pleased that the Institute of Chartered Accountants have joined up and encouraged their members to come through, similarly the Law Society. Because when you think about where the knowledge is, where the critical points are, it's not just within any one company, but potentially it's quite diffuse across a number of areas. So what are we trying to offer through the CISP partnership? As it says on the slide, our intention is that there should be a real working government and industry partnership in action. And when I say industry, I actually mean a lot wider than that. It could be academia, it could be elements of the NGO communities as well, depending on who has an interest in this. I guess the bit that people most focus on is what do we put out in terms of products. So there are the alerts, the advisories. I don't know if those of you involved have seen the work around the Heartbleed recent experience. So we try and join up. So Cert-Uk has a website, a public-facing website. Anyone can go and look at it. There we will put basic information about an advisory, but most of the time we'll be trying to point people, or those who should be, onto the CISP forum, onto the CISP platform, where we've got more information and more detailed information. So the advisories and alerts that we're putting on the website are the sort of introduction notes. The detailed stuff is on the CISP portal. But it's a wider social networking tool as well, and a lot of the dialogue that goes on within the CISP platform, within the CISP forums, covers a wide range of different areas. Some of the most extensive dialogue, for example, has been over the end of Windows XP, where because we've got the ability for people to post anonymously, you don't have to put the name of your company when you're saying, yeah, we have to fess up that we're not actually going to replace all our computers, therefore we are going to keep running Windows XP. Has anyone got any suggestions and advice in terms of how we therefore remain secure and the sort of steps that we can take? And that has generated an awful lot of dialogue and debate with lots of ideas coming in. And once one person is able to put their hands up and say, yeah, we're not doing it. An awful lot have come in immediately behind that and said, yeah, we're not doing it either. So you can generate that sort of dialogue. We have the traffic light protocol in force on the environment, so people understand what they can do with the different bits of information available. That ranges from red, which means it's named individuals only, amber, it can be shared within organisations specified, green, it can be shared across the entire environment, or white means that it's publicly available information. What we can also do is bring in information that we get from our international contacts. So, as I mentioned at the start, we work very closely with our US colleagues, so the people in NKIC or NCFTA, and we have a special agreement with them that allows us to put their alerts and advisories onto the CIS platform for our members to use. The other element we have is the Fusion Cell, and we have a number of different industry partners who provide either specific individuals or data feeds or access to technical capabilities, and they sit in the same room as us, work alongside us, and are very much part of that team. So, as I stressed at the start, we recognise this is about partnerships. You know, there's nothing worse than just saying, well, this is everything the government's going to do, we're going to do it in isolation. It's recognising that we need to work with a whole range of people, and that's why I'm so pleased to be stood here today, because my ending point is that this is a bit of a sales pitch. We would love you to become members of the CIS forum. The details are on www.cisp.org.uk. There is a set of membership criteria. I would be very confident that almost everybody sat in this room would meet that membership criteria. But we're also in the market for those of you who think you've got a bit more to offer, whether that's in terms of providing individuals to sit within the Fusion Cell. And I stress that the people who do that tend to be the non-government ones, the industry people, tend to come for 2 days a week, recognising that you know, if a company can spare someone for 5 days a week for 6 months, they'd probably cut the slot entirely. But the value we get from having someone from 2 days a week across the range of different companies means that we can staff out the Fusion Cell for the whole week. But equally, if you've got data flows that you think would be interested in, or tools and things that you think we should be aware of, that's where I'm going to end. Thank you very much indeed for listening. As I say, I'll be here and around for the lunch break and the discussion chance that provides. But I would really like you to take up some of the offers, whether that's in terms of joining the CIS platform or giving us your thoughts in terms of how we can run the exercising or how we can engage with yours. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you, Andrew. Any questions for Andrew? I think Adrian was first there.
Hi,
and then
Adrian
at the
from
back.
Arnold again. You said something about the work you did with the heartbleed sort of thing. I mean, I'm wondering what you actually did. Perhaps you can just elaborate. That might explain more about what you do.
Sure. So, in terms of heartbleed, obviously this was in day 3 or whatever we'd come into being. We got tipped off about it, slightly ahead of it breaking in the mainstream media. We're able to pull together the sort of initial advisories, then I think we've done 2 subsequent advisories. They're available on the public website. But more importantly, on the CISP cell, within the CISP environment, using the Fusion Cell, using the knowledge of our members, we've been able to pull together a lot more information, whether that's in terms of the steps that people should take, whether that's in terms of the risks that are out there. And I'm really pleased to say we've got some really excellent feedback on that. You know, we've had a number of organisations come to us and say that as soon as they knew that we were there and putting this out, they were able to use that fairly exclusively as the channel of information. I don't know if that helps.
Okay, and then at the back, Nigel?
I think there was... Oh, okay. Who else?
Am I live
Someone
here?
raise your hand if you had a question.
No, here.
No, we've
Got the mic, but it doesn't appear to be turned on. Is that on now? Yeah, okay. Nigel Titley, RIPE NCC. Are your websites IPv6 enabled?
That's Martin's line.
It's been a really important thing for us right from the start in terms of knowing that we're a very obvious target for people to go after, As I say, we've drawn on a lot of experience from people who have, Neil himself is involved in setting up a number of very high-profile websites. We add ourselves to that list. I'm sure we are a target. I'm sure there are lots of people who will have a go for us. Fingers crossed that we'll be able to take it. I'm afraid I'm not the technical side of the house, so I can take that away and get back to you if you want.
I think you've misunderstood my question. Are your websites reachable via IPv6? And I think the answer is no, because I've checked. And for a new organisation that specialises in cybersecurity, I would say that's a very, very serious mistake.
Any other questions?
There was
yes.
one here, and then I have a question.
Sorry, Stuart from Arista Network. Okay. There are many organisations.
I think the battery in that microphone must be going. Have we got another? There's another one here.
There's many organisations internationally that are serving similar roles. There's two sides to this question. Are you looking to work with those organisations as well? And what are you bringing from a UK perspective that's important to this room?
So our ambition, I guess, is covers a number of areas. So we are the national cert in terms of the sort of Carnegie Mellon definitions about who can be a national cert and who isn't. So that allows us to plug in a number of networks and forums that are specifically dedicated to national government exchanges. So, for example, as I say, I was in Oman recently talking on behalf of the UK at their Regional Cybersecurity Summit. Our ambition is largely, if I'm honest, focused on government-to-government contact at the national cert level. But equally, we plug into relevant international fora where that makes sense. So FIRST being the obvious example. In terms of the question about what we give and what we get, it's largely around that sharing of situational awareness information. But crucially, it's in terms of making sure that we've got the contacts there. Should there ever be an incident, we need to draw on those contacts to respond to that incident.
I think, Keith, you had a question, didn't you?
Yeah, Keith Mitchell, UKNOF. My question is that, as an industry, I think we take a lot of pride in self-regulation and self-organisation in solving problems, but there are a number of categories of internet security problem where there's actually market failure. I will go my broken record thing about BCP38 source address validation. I guess you could regard the lack of IPv6 support by the UK government as a kind of market failure, following on from Nigel's question. But also, for example, there is insufficient funding of QA and testing for critical open source software, for example, NTP and Heartbleed are just the two most recent examples of that. Are there things that you think there are a potential solution to some of these market failure issues that have critical security implications?
So I think that's a very good question. If I'm perfectly honest, it goes broader than my specific remit, but I'll happily have a go at the answer. So we have the National Cyber Security Programme, and one of the elements of funding within that is dedicated to looking at the research and the academic side of cybersecurity funding from the government. I hope part of what we can provide, and in fact the CIS platform might be a good area to do this, is to try and generate that debate, because there are certain areas that we do know about, but there are equally areas where the expertise like yourselves, like there is in this room, will be able to give us a very good view in terms of what areas we should be focusing that spending on. If I'm honest, it's not the sort of pot of funding that I control, but I can certainly take that back and feed it in.
Okay,
first of all,
last question.
Thanks for coming along. As an industry that should recognise that if there's no security, we don't have an industry. It's great to see some sort of initiative, no matter what it is, so I thank you for that. My question is, I've spent a lot of time doing stuff with Israel and Israeli companies. I don't think there's a better organised government in the world that copes with cyber security issues than in Israel. And
Finland's pretty good, but
I'd encourage you to go out and have a chat with those guys. They're quite open. They'll tell you many things, and they're very, very well organised, very impressively organised as well. And I encourage you to embrace them. I met the British ambassador out there with them, and he's very well connected.
yeah, I would commend the Finnish government on that as well. They have their act together.
Great. Well, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks very much, Andrew.